The year is 1932. The Great Depression is in full effect and has creeped up in every part of American life. It's also election year. Incumbent President Herbert Hoover is in the battle of his career against the Democratic governor of New York, Franklin D. Roosevelt. It's the government's responsibility to guarantee every man a right to make a comfortable living, claims Roosevelt. He's also running on the promise to end prohibition and balance the United States budget. The results are in, and Franklin Roosevelt has swept the nation. It's an undisputed victory for FDR and his 472 electoral votes. President Franklin D. Roosevelt will be the commander-in-chief for the next 12 years and the only sitting president to serve for more than 2 consecutive terms, a thing that has been outlawed since then with the passing of the 22nd Amendment. As he takes up the role of president, FDR will inherit a crumbling economy and record numbers of unemployment. He will utilize every power of the executive branch and federal government in an attempt to save the American way of life. His solution to the Great Depression? The New Deal. The New Deal is best described as a multitude of newly formed federal agencies and legislature passed by the New Deal coalition and President FDR as a means to alleviate the effects of the Great Depression. The New Deal can be broken up into 2 major parts. The first New Deal, enacted between 1933 and 1934, attempted to curb the effects of the stock market crash and bolster labor rights. The second New Deal, enacted between 1935 and 1936, focused on infrastructure, welfare, and environmental conservation. There were 69 agencies created in total by the end of FDR's 3 terms. Some were the products of legislation and others of presidential executive order. These agencies are also known as the alphabet soup. These agencies dealt with direct financial relief to American citizens, mortgage relief, creating infrastructure and conservation jobs, creating a bank safety net to prevent market crashes, fixing labor relations and guaranteeing workers' rights, and so much more. By the time FDR took office, thousands of banks around the country had already collapsed, and 1 in 4 Americans were out of work. Nearly 13 million workers were left unemployed, each one of them not sure how their family and them were going to make it going forward. The effects were detrimental. Poverty swept the nation as suicide rates continued to rise. There was a brewing unrest among the American working class as well, as those that were fortunate enough to still have a job were fighting tooth and nail for better working conditions and living wages. Workers started to unite under the banners of workers' rights and worker unity. Well, not a pretty one. Strikes and picket lines were a common sight during the Great Depression, and they had a habit of ending in violence. As mentioned previously, the first New Deal sought to effectively give workers better rights to organize and bargain with their employers. Immediately after taking office in 1933, to reconcile this divide, the New Deal coalition and President FDR passed the National Industrial Recovery Act, a law that sought to expand workers' rights to unionize and bargain for better conditions. With the passing of this law, the United States of America would see its biggest and most organized strike of the decade, the West Coast Waterfront Strike. Fighting to re-establish their union, longshoremen workers from Washington, Oregon, and California would join in a walkout that would effectively shut down ports over 2,000 miles of coastline for 83 days. There was strength and unity when it came to workplace bargaining, and workers understood that. The passing of the NIRA in 1933 effectively allowed American workers the right to establish unions and negotiate better working conditions. This precedent would be reinforced with the passing of the National Labor Relations Act, or the Wagner Act, in 1935, that would create a board which will serve as an arbiter of labor disputes between workers and capitalists, and would further cement the right to unionize and strike as a protected right of the American worker.